Hi there, I'm Marwan. When I was 14, my parents laughed in my face and kicked me out onto the street. Said I'd come crawling back, begging. But what hurt more than the night they threw me out was how they kept coming back to finish what they started. They spread lies about me, ruined every chance I had, and when I finally built a billion-dollar company without them, they tried to tear it all down, again. Ever wonder how far a family can go, just to watch you fail? I'm 32 now, sitting at the top of a billion-dollar tech construction company based in San Francisco, the kind of life people envy. But none of them know the night that rewrote everything. The night I lost everything at 14. Growing up in Tucson, Arizona, I wasn't the daughter my parents dreamed of. Osric, my father, was a man who believed authority wasn't given, it was seized. My mother, Selena, was his echo. They had one obsession: image. Their reputation in the neighborhood mattered more than anything, more than me. They had plans for me: honor student, Ivy League, perfect daughter who smiled in photos and stayed quiet at dinner. But I wasn't that girl. I questioned them. I wanted something different. And in their eyes, that made me defective. I didn't know that one night in 2010 would be the night everything snapped. It was a Saturday. The house smelled like roast beef and stale wine. They'd invited half the neighborhood, relatives, friends, anyone they could show off to. I was at the far end of the dinner table, mostly silent, chewing the inside of my cheek while they laughed too loud, talked too much. Then came the moment. My father raised his glass and said, "Our daughter has something to share, don't you, Marwan?" I knew what he expected, some rehearsed gratitude speech. Instead, I looked up and said quietly, "I'm not going to be the daughter you want. I don't want to go to Stanford. I don't want to live your life." The room went silent. You could hear a fork drop. My mother's smile cracked like cheap porcelain. Osric's jaw tightened. He leaned forward. "Excuse me?" "I don't want to be part of this performance," I said, louder now. "I want my own life." Selena's voice cut like a blade, sweet and sharp. "Look at you, ungrateful. You'll be back here in a month, begging us to let you in." Her words made the air heavier, but it was my father's reaction that shattered me. He stood up, looked around at the relatives, then laughed. A cold, calculated laugh. "She thinks she's too good for her family. Let her go. She'll learn soon enough." They didn't even let me pack properly. My mother grabbed an old backpack from the hallway, stuffed in a few clothes and my worn sneakers. My father opened the front door, gestured toward the dark street like a hotel doorman. "Out," he said. "If you're so grown up, let's see how far you get." I remember every face around that table, some shocked, some entertained. No one stopped them. They threw me out like yesterday's garbage. Outside, the Tucson night felt colder than it should have in April. I stood there, holding that stupid backpack, waiting for someone, anyone, to tell me it was a joke. No one did. The door slammed behind me. I didn't even hear it lock. They knew I wouldn't dare come back. I walked down the driveway, numb, my heart pounding so loud I couldn't hear anything else. That night, it didn't end there. Around 10 p.m., while I was still wandering the streets trying to figure out what to do, I passed by Mrs. Jensen's house, our neighbor. Her front window was open. I heard her voice laughing. "She finally kicked Marwan out," Mrs. Jensen said to someone on the phone. "That girl's always been trouble. Selena says she won't last a week." The next day, everyone knew. Selena made sure of it. She called half the block that night, parading her victory. I heard things like, "Sometimes tough love is the only love," and "You can't let a child disrespect you in your own home." By Monday, kids at school whispered behind my back. Not that I stayed long enough to hear most of it. The humiliation wasn't just in being thrown out. It was in the knowledge that they wanted people to know. They didn't want me to come crawling back. They wanted to watch me fall. That night, sitting on the curb outside a 24-hour diner, staring at my scraped-up sneakers, I realized something. They weren't just done with me. They wanted me to fail. And I promised myself right there under the blinking neon sign and the cold Arizona night air, I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. I would survive. I would win. I didn't sleep much that night. After hours of wandering the streets, unsure where I was headed, I finally texted the only person I trusted, Dahlia. She was a year older, lived across town, and had a couch she once joked was always open if I ever ran away. When she opened her door at midnight, I could see the panic in her eyes. She didn't ask questions right away. Instead, she handed me a blanket and said, "You can crash here tonight. We'll figure things out in the morning." That couch became my island in a sea of uncertainty. The next morning, the Arizona sun felt harsh and unforgiving through the blinds. I barely had the energy to get up, but I knew I had to. I told myself school would at least be something familiar, something normal. I gathered my backpack, the same one my parents had stuffed with my clothes like I was nothing, and headed back. The moment I stepped onto campus, it felt like something had shifted. Whispers floated in the hallways. People glanced, then looked away quickly, like I was contagious. I told myself it was just in my head, until I was called to the principal's office during third period. Principal Harris didn't even look me in the eye when I walked in. He cleared his throat awkwardly, motioned for me to sit. "Marwen," he began, flipping through a folder. "Your mother contacted us this morning." I sat up straighter, my stomach tightening. "What did she say?" He avoided my gaze. "She's requested that we remove your name from school records, effective immediately." It took me a second to process. "What do you mean, remove my name?" "She said you no longer live at home. You've been disowned. She provided paperwork. And—" He hesitated, glancing at me like he wanted to apologize but couldn't. "She also informed us you've been struggling mentally, that you're unstable, a danger to other students." I felt something inside me break, sharp and irreparable. My parents hadn't just kicked me out of their house, they were erasing me, making sure I couldn't belong anywhere. "Is that why everyone's been staring at me?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. By lunchtime, my school ID had been deactivated. I couldn't access the cafeteria. The bus driver told me my pass didn't work anymore. It was as if I had vanished overnight, like I'd never been there. Dahlia tried to act like nothing had changed, handing me her extra sandwich at lunch. But even she couldn't shield me from the looks, the parents who pulled their kids away when I walked past, the teachers who stopped calling on me in class. One afternoon, as I walked home alone, I overheard two mothers talking outside the grocery store. "Poor Selena," one of them said. "Kicking your own daughter out. That takes guts." The other woman nodded, folding her arms. "Well, you know how kids are these days. Unruly, disrespectful. She had to do what she had to do." They talked about me like I was some cautionary tale, like I wasn't even human. The worst part wasn't the gossip. It wasn't the stares or the loss of stability. It was the voice in my head whispering, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you really are broken." Days blurred together after that. No school, no home. I crashed at Dahlia's, but her parents weren't thrilled about me being there. The couch wasn't a long-term plan, and I knew it. I spent hours walking around town, applying for part-time jobs I wasn't old enough to legally hold, pretending like I had control over anything. One night, after yet another rejection, I sat alone at the bus stop, watching the headlights blur past. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd dismantled every piece of my existence, and I couldn't shake the sinking feeling that I was exactly who they said I was, disposable. But as I stared out at the empty street, something inside me hardened. If they wanted me erased, I'd make damn sure I became someone they couldn't ignore. That was the day I realized I wasn't just homeless. I was invisible. People stopped seeing me the moment my parents erased me. But being forgotten wasn't the worst thing. They made sure I was remembered for all the wrong reasons. It started slowly. A neighbor's glance that lingered too long. Store clerks watching me like I was about to slip something into my pocket. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was imagining things. But one afternoon, a week after I'd been kicked out, I walked past Mrs. Jensen's yard again. She was watering her flowers, pretending not to notice me until she spoke loud enough for me to hear. "Lock up your purses, ladies," she said to her friend. "The thief is back." I froze. Her friend didn't even glance my way. "Is that the one Selena said stole money from her?" "Yep," Mrs. Jensen replied, shaking her head like she pitied me. "And pills, too. Drugs. Poor Osric and Selena, raising a child like that." I wanted to scream. To tell them it was a lie. But I knew it wouldn't matter. The rumors spread like wildfire after that. Everywhere I went in the neighborhood, whispers followed me like shadows. I wasn't just the daughter who'd been thrown out. I was the thief, the junkie, the troubled kid who couldn't be trusted. Store owners stopped letting me in without following me down every aisle. Kids I'd known since elementary school crossed the street when they saw me coming. One night, while scrolling through Dahlia's old laptop at her place, I stumbled onto something that nearly broke me. My old classmates had started a Facebook group. It wasn't private. The name was clear. Marwan's Meltdown. They'd taken an old yearbook photo of me and slapped a red "wanted" sign over it. Underneath, there were edited photos, one with my face photoshopped behind prison bars, another where someone had crudely drawn a syringe in my hand. The captions were worse. "Guess she finally snapped. She always looked like a junkie. Wonder how long before she ends up in juvie." There were comments from people I used to sit next to in class, people who'd been at birthday parties at my house, people who knew better, or should have. I scrolled further and saw posts claiming I'd been arrested, that I'd stolen cash from my parents' safe, that I'd been caught dealing drugs behind the school. All of it was fake, but it didn't matter. The next day, when I stopped by a diner on 4th Street to ask if they were hiring, the manager barely looked at me before shaking his head. "Not looking to hire troublemakers," he muttered. Another place. Another door slammed. I wanted to crawl out of my skin. The rumors followed me everywhere. They weren't content with kicking me out of their house. They wanted to make sure I had nowhere left to go. I remember sitting outside that same diner later that night, the air dry and cool against my skin. I watched families laughing inside, their worlds intact, untouched. I thought about what my parents had told people, that I was dangerous, broken, worthless. Maybe if you hear something enough times, you start to believe it. That night, I almost did. Almost. But then I thought about the way they laughed when they threw me out. The way they'd made sure everyone knew they were the ones in control. That's when I realized their lies wouldn't kill me, but my silence might. That night, something inside me snapped, and I knew the next time they tried to break me, I'd be ready. I spent the next few weeks keeping my head down. No more trying to defend myself, no more fighting the rumors. I realized fighting fire with fire only fed their story. Instead, I started quietly saving every penny I could. Dahlia's parents tolerated me, but I knew I was on borrowed time. So I took whatever odd jobs people didn't want, cleaning garages, stacking boxes, even scrubbing floors at the local laundromat after closing. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. One evening, while wiping down tables at a small diner off Speedway Boulevard, a man walked in. Tall, middle-aged, wearing a leather jacket that smelled faintly of gasoline. His name was Merrick. I recognized him immediately. He used to stop by our house when I was little, sharing beers with my dad on Sunday afternoons, laughing too loud at things that weren't funny. He spotted me before I could duck away. "Well, if it isn't Marwan," he said, his voice all syrup and smiles. "Haven't seen you in a while. Heard your folks had troubles with you." It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. Like he knew the story, like he thought I was exactly what everyone said. I gave him a polite nod, finished cleaning, tried to ignore him, but he came back the next night, and the one after that. Each time, he'd drop a few extra dollars in the tip jar, strike up small talk. He never asked about the rumors, never mentioned my parents after that first night. Just offered little pieces of kindness, a ride home when it was late, a sandwich when I hadn't eaten all day. After a while, I let my guard down. He wasn't like the others. He didn't look at me like I was broken. One night, he showed up outside the diner with a manila envelope and a smile. "You don't belong here, kid," he said. "I know people. I can help you get on your feet. Rent a room, get steady work. But you're gonna need some money." I told him I was saving, but it wasn't much. Merrick shrugged, lighting a cigarette. "You trust me, right? Let me handle it. Give me what you've got, and I'll set it up. No strings attached." For a second, I hesitated. But no one else had ever offered me anything without expecting something in return. I handed him everything I had saved, every single dollar, nearly $1,200. It felt like my last shot. The next day, he disappeared. No phone call, no word, just gone. I tried calling the number he gave me. Disconnected. I asked around the neighborhood. No one had seen him. 3 days later, Dahlia showed me a message she'd found on her older brother's Facebook account. It was from Merrick, a private message to my parents. "She's still stupid enough to fall for it," he wrote. "Told you she needed one last lesson." My stomach dropped. It wasn't random. It wasn't just Merrick. They had sent him. Osric and Selena knew I was surviving, and they couldn't stand it, so they sent someone to tear me down one more time. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat on Dahlia's back porch, staring up at the empty Arizona sky. And I made a decision. That was the last time anyone would ever use me. They wanted me broken. I was going to make sure I became unbreakable. For years, I ran from their poison. This time, I was ready to fight back. After Merrick's betrayal, I buried myself in survival. I worked, I studied. I kept my head down and made myself invisible. Not because I was weak, but because I was building something they couldn't touch. By 21, I had clawed my way into an apprenticeship at a small tech construction firm in Phoenix. I worked 16-hour days, took online classes at night, slept 4 hours if I was lucky. No one handed me anything. I fought for every inch. By 26, I had saved enough to move to San Francisco and launch my own company, a hybrid tech construction startup that specialized in sustainable housing. I named it MarTech, not after myself, but as a reminder of everything they said I couldn't be. The first few years were brutal. Investors turned me down. Clients didn't take me seriously. Men in boardrooms called me sweetheart, like I didn't belong there. But I kept going. By the time I was 30, local news outlets started noticing. Young woman CEO reinvents affordable housing. Tucson native breaks barriers in Silicon Valley. Every time they wrote my name, it felt like another brick added to the wall between me and my parents' voices in my head. For the first time in years, I started to breathe. Until the day I saw the Facebook post. A friend from back home had tagged me in a comment, asking, "Is this your mom?" I clicked the link. There she was, Selena. A carefully curated photo of her in front of a church fundraiser, hands folded like a saint. The caption underneath made my stomach churn. It breaks my heart that my only daughter abandoned her family for money and fame. Some kids forget where they came from. I pray for her soul every night. The comments were worse. "You did your best, Selena. Sometimes kids go bad." Ungrateful children always come crawling back when it's too late. I stared at the screen, pulse pounding. But it didn't stop there. The next week, one of my investors forwarded me an email from Selena Osric, subject, a warning about Marwan. The message was short, sharp, and filled with poison. "She may look successful, but you should know how she treats her family. She abandoned us. Be careful doing business with someone who has no loyalty." I read it twice, then 3 more times. There it was. The same strategy they'd used when I was 14. But this time, they weren't whispering in grocery stores. They were trying to burn down everything I'd built. That night, I picked up my phone and called her. She answered on the second ring, voice sweet like sugar-coated glass. Well, You finally remembered you have a mother. I didn't waste time. You listened to me carefully, Selena, I said, voice calm but sharp. If you ever try to sabotage my life again, I will drag every dirty thing you've ever done into the light. And believe me, I have receipts. She laughed, soft and fake. Oh, honey, you're still so dramatic. I'm not a kid anymore, I said coldly, and this is your last warning. Next time, I won't call. I'll expose you. There was a pause, just long enough for me to picture her smirk slipping. You've changed, she finally said. No, I replied. I grew up. I hung up without waiting for her to respond. I knew this wasn't over, but this time I wasn't running. Days after that call, I thought the storm had passed. Weeks went by without another message, no more slander floating around Silicon Valley's boardrooms, no backhanded emails from investors forwarding my mother's smear campaign. Then, one afternoon, an envelope arrived at my office. No sender's name. Just a neat, old-fashioned handwriting. For Marwan. Inside, a formal invitation. Family dinner, Tucson, Arizona. Location, Osric and Selena's residence. Purpose, reconciliation and healing. Date, Saturday, 7 p.m. I stared at it like it might catch fire in my hands. At first I laughed. They'd spent years trying to destroy me, and now they wanted peace. But a tiny part of me wanted to see what game they were playing. That Saturday, I flew back to Tucson. Not for them, but for myself. I needed to look them in the eyes and see what was left. The evening was uncomfortable from the start. Selena greeted me at the door like nothing had happened, her arms open, her smile thin and brittle. Oh, darling, she cooed. You look so successful. We're so proud. Osric shook my hand like I was a business associate, not the daughter he'd thrown away. The dining room was decorated like it always had been. Polished silverware, floral centerpiece, everything staged perfectly, like a picture in a magazine. But underneath the candlelight and hollow smiles, I could feel it. The tension so thick you could slice it with a butter knife. We ate in near silence. They asked about my business, my apartment, the people I worked with. No mention of the lies, no apology. Halfway through dessert, Selena cleared her throat delicately. Well, sweetheart, she said, folding her napkin too neatly, there's actually something we wanted to talk to you about. Osric nodded solemnly, like a man about to deliver bad news to a stranger. That's when she slid the folder across the table. Legal papers, a cosign request, a mountain of debt staring back at me in black and white. Credit cards, unpaid loans, a second mortgage. Just a little help, Selena said sweetly, like she hadn't spent a decade trying to ruin me. Family should stick together. I stared at her, stunned at how far she would go. This isn't a small favor, I said quietly. You want me to take responsibility for your choices. Osric leaned forward. We built you, Marwan. You wouldn't be who you are without us. I laughed, sharp and bitter. You're right, I wouldn't. Because every ounce of success I have is built on surviving you. Selena's smile froze. I thought you wanted to make peace, I continued. But this is just another game, another leash. She sighed dramatically. We thought you'd grown past your childish anger. I pushed the papers back across the table. Here's what I've grown past, letting you manipulate me. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. This is your last chance, I said evenly. If you try to drag me down again, I won't just walk away. Selena opened her mouth to speak, but I didn't wait. I walked out of that house, the same one they'd thrown me out of all those years ago. And this time, I left on my terms. That night, sitting in my rental car in front of their picture-perfect lawn, I realized something chilling. They'd never stop, not until I stopped them myself. That night, I realized they'd never stop until I stopped them myself. The next morning, I boarded a flight back to San Francisco, leaving Tucson and that suffocating dinner table behind. I thought maybe the silence would last a little longer, that the message I left on their polished dining room floor would be enough. I was wrong. It started small. A text from my cousin Amanda, the one I hadn't spoken to since I was 16. "Hey! Aunt Selena said you're turning your back on family. Is that true?" Then another. "You know they're struggling, right? They gave you everything." By noon, my inbox was filled with messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. "Your parents sacrificed so much. You're too proud, Marwan. Don't forget where you came from. It's just money. Family is everything." They framed it like concern, but I knew better. It was a coordinated attack. Osric and Selena had mobilized the entire family, weaponized their guilt, their nostalgia, their loyalty. By the end of the week, even distant relatives I barely remembered were calling, leaving voicemails dripping with pressure. "Marwan," Uncle Robert's voice drawled, "you can't let pride tear this family apart." And then came the worst one. A message from my grandmother. "Baby girl, they're your parents. You only get one family." Each word cut deeper than the last. I could almost hear Selena coaching them behind the scenes, painting herself the martyr and me the villain. But it didn't stop there. One Monday morning, I walked into my office and saw Marla, my assistant, hovering nervously outside my door. "There's something you need to see," she said. She handed me her tablet. A headline screamed back at me from the local Tucson news website. "Tech CEO abandons bankrupt parents. Family claims she forgot her roots." Underneath, a photo of me, pulled from my company website, next to a years-old picture of Selena and Osric standing outside their house, looking frail and pitiful. The article quoted a family source, my Aunt Rowena. She told them I had left my poor parents to drown in debt while I basked in Silicon Valley riches. I sat back in my chair, pulse pounding in my ears. They hadn't just brought the family into this. They'd dragged the world into it too. By noon, reporters were calling my office. By 3 p.m., clients were asking questions. And by 5 p.m., I knew exactly what I had to do. That evening, I stood behind a podium in front of a wall of cameras. I'd spent the afternoon drafting a statement with my legal team, but when the lights hit my face, I pushed the paper aside. I spoke from my chest. "My name is Marwan Osric," I began. "I was disowned by my family at 14. I built everything I have today without their help, and despite their efforts to tear me down." I paused, letting the weight of it settle. "I will not apologize for surviving. I will not apologize for protecting myself." I glanced straight into the cameras. I love the idea of family, but family does not mean manipulation, exploitation, or abuse, and I will not allow anyone, blood or not, to weaponize my past against me. I stepped away from the mic to the sound of flashing cameras. That night, as I sat in my apartment overlooking the bay, I knew something fundamental had shifted. They'd wanted a war. Now they had one. What came next wasn't just war. It was survival. The morning after my press conference, I woke up to a flood of emails. Some were supportive. Strangers, colleagues, even old classmates who'd quietly watched my rise. Others were ugly, laced with judgment and shame. But in the middle of all that noise, one message stood out. It was from Selena. No subject line, no greeting. "We're losing the house. Your father is sick. We need you." Short, sharp, meant to cut. I deleted it without replying, but she didn't stop. The next day, a voicemail. "Marwan, it's your mother. I know you're angry, but your father, he's not well. We're behind on the mortgage. The bank's coming after us. Please, don't let us end up on the street." For a moment, I felt it. That old guilt, the one they'd been feeding me since I was a child. But it wasn't the same anymore. I knew better. 3 days later, another message arrived. This time, an email with an attachment. Medical records. Subject line, "Your mother's condition." I opened it reluctantly. Stage 4 cancer diagnosis. The words blurred in front of my eyes. And then, something told me to check. I forwarded the document to one of my attorneys, who had contacts in Arizona's health system. It didn't take long. The records were fake. The name of the physician didn't match the hospital. The dates of diagnosis conflicted. It was a fabrication, a final, desperate manipulation. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, the city lights of San Francisco glowing beyond my window. I stared at the email, at the cold, calculated lie. They hadn't just wanted my money. They wanted to own me again. The next morning, I booked a flight to Tucson. When I arrived, I didn't go to their house. I asked them to meet me at a coffee shop downtown, neutral ground. They walked in together, older, smaller than I remembered, but still wearing the same masks. Selena smiled, brittle as glass. Osric stayed quiet, his eyes hollow. "You got my message," she said softly. I nodded, sliding a folder across the table. It contained the mortgage balance, the overdue notices, every financial document they'd quietly sent me over the past few months. "I'll pay this," I said calmly. "One time." Selena's face lit up like Christmas morning. "But—" I raised a hand, cutting her off. "This is the last thing I will ever do for you." Her smile faltered. "I'm not doing this because I owe you," I continued. "I'm doing it because I want to close this chapter." Osric shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "There's something else," Selena said quickly, voice soft and syrupy. "I've been sick." I shook my head. "Don't," I said. I checked. The reports were fake. Her mouth opened, then shut again. The lie exposed, hanging heavy between us. "I'll clear the mortgage," I said. "But after that, we're done." Osric leaned forward. "We're family!" I met his gaze without blinking. "No," I said quietly. "We're strangers who used to share a roof." I stood, leaving the check on the table. Selena called after me as I walked away. "Marwan, you're making a mistake. You'll regret this." I didn't look back. That night, flying home, I stared out the plane window at the darkness stretching below. For the first time in my life, I felt something close to peace. They couldn't hurt me anymore. I thought it was over. I was wrong. A week after I wired the final payment to clear their debts, the internet reminded me just how far they'd go. It started with a message from a former colleague. "Hey Marwan, saw your parents' post. Nice to see you finally reconciled." I blinked at the screen. I hadn't. Curious, and with a sick feeling in my gut, I clicked the link. There it was. A post from Selena's Facebook account, accompanied by photos of me as a child. Birthday parties, first day of school photos, me grinning awkwardly at 14, the night before they threw me out. "Family is everything," the caption read. "We're so proud of our daughter and all she's accomplished. No matter what, a parent's love never fades." Thousands of likes, comments from neighbors, old family friends. "You raised her well. She's a testament to good parenting. Glad you all patched things up." I scrolled faster, my heart sinking. Instagram, Twitter, even local media outlets picked up the story, painting Osric and Selena as proud, supportive parents behind a wildly successful daughter. They posted photos I hadn't seen in years. They painted a picture of a perfect, loving family, a family that never existed. It wasn't just vanity, it was theft. They were hijacking my story, turning my survival into their achievement. By noon, reporters were emailing my office for quotes about our beautiful family reunion. By afternoon, I'd had enough. I called my legal team. They moved fast. We filed cease and desist letters, copyright claims over the photos, public statements correcting the narrative. We didn't scream or argue. We documented. We dismantled their fantasy. And then, I let it go. I could have done more. Could have dragged them publicly through the mud, listed every betrayal, every cruel thing they'd done. But I didn't. Because I was tired. Tired of fighting ghosts. Weeks passed. The media storm died down. People moved on to the next scandal, the next feel-good story. One night, sitting in my apartment overlooking the bay, I scrolled past an old family photo someone had reposted. There we were. Me, 10 years old, between Osric and Selena, smiling like I belonged. I closed my phone and leaned back. For so long, I'd believed that survival meant winning. That if I worked harder, became bigger, richer, louder, I could drown out the pain. But the truth was quieter. I hadn't needed to win. I'd needed to be free. And I was. My scars would never disappear. Some nights, the echoes of their laughter still rang in my head. Some wounds don't heal, but they don't have to define you. I became everything they said I couldn't, and I did it without them. Before I let you go, I want to leave you with this. If there's one thing I've learned from everything I lived through, it's this. Family isn't about blood. It's about how people make you feel when you're at your worst. It's about who shows up when you have nothing to give. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who break you. But hear me when I say, you are not what they did to you. You are not the scars they left behind. You are the person who stood up and kept going anyway. In this country, we're taught to believe in second chances. But you also have the right to protect your peace, your future, your freedom, even if that means walking away from the people who gave you life. So now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you thought you couldn't live without? What was the moment you finally realized? Enough is enough. Drop your story in the comments. If this video touched you or made you feel seen, type number 1 in the comments, or tell me where you're watching from. And if you didn't like this story, I want to know why. What part didn't sit right with you? Your voice matters here. And hey, if you want to hear more true stories like this one, stories that will make you think, make you feel, maybe even help you heal, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This isn't just a channel. It's a place where we talk about the things nobody wants to talk about, but everyone needs to hear. Because at the end of the day, your past doesn't get to decide who you become. You do.
James, you're a disgrace to this family. You're not wanted here. Those sharp words, filled with anger and disappointment, cut through the air. They came from my own father, spat out like venom in the middle of my brother Paul's wedding celebration. The sting of humiliation was unbearable, made even worse by Paul's silence. He said nothing, standing by as our father threw me out like I was nothing. Anger surged within me, and I was on the verge of storming out when something unexpected happened. Someone asked for help. A staff member at the wedding, overwhelmed by a sudden crisis, reached out to me, pleading for assistance. This unexpected moment shifted the course of the evening. I helped, and in doing so, something changed. For the first time in years, my father truly saw the person I had become, not the failure he always thought I was. It was a shock not just to him but to me as well. My name is James, and I am one of 2 brothers in this family. Growing up, our father was a stern and demanding lawyer who always favored my brother Paul. Paul, the golden child, was everything my father wanted in a son: confident, successful, and seemingly flawless. As for me, I was always in Paul's shadow, never quite good enough. There was no time for play or leisure in our house. Every moment was dedicated to studying or lessons, and any joy I found was quickly crushed by my father's disapproval. Despite my relentless efforts to match Paul's achievements and win my father's approval, I constantly fell short. The final blow came when I failed the entrance exam for a prestigious school my father had his heart set on. The silence that followed from him was deafening. From that moment on, it felt as though I had disappeared in his eyes. His focus shifted entirely to Paul, leaving me behind, and even my mother's quiet support couldn't fill the growing emptiness. Determined to escape the suffocating environment at home, I made a difficult decision after high school. I left without saying a word to my father. I left only a note for my mother, telling her that I was going to make my own way. I found work at a hotel, where I could both live and earn a living. The hotel became my sanctuary, a place far removed from the expectations and judgments of my father. In the hustle and bustle of the guests and staff, I found a sense of freedom and fulfillment that I had never known at home. But the job wasn't easy. The hotel manager, Brian, was strict and demanding. Every mistake I made was met with sharp criticism, and as someone fresh out of high school, I made plenty of mistakes. James, another error? How many times do I have to tell you? he would say, pushing me to do better. But unlike my father's cutting remarks, Brian's feedback wasn't meant to tear me down. It was constructive, and when I earned his praise, it gave me a sense of pride and motivation that I had never experienced before. One moment in particular stands out: the Los Angeles, the busiest time for the hotel. I had completed all my required training, and the pressure was at its peak. Everyone was rushing, tensions were high, but I was determined to prove myself. This was my chance to show that I was capable, not just to Brian, but to myself. In that moment, surrounded by the chaos of the hotel, I realized that I didn't need my father's approval to find value in myself. I had built something on my own, and that was worth more than any acknowledgement from him. This journey had been long and painful, but it led me to a place where I could finally see myself clearly, not as a failure, but as someone strong and capable. That year, I was entrusted to work independently for the first time, and it was more challenging than I could have imagined. The hotel was packed with guests, far more than usual, pushing our resources to their limits. The chaos of serving dinner, both in the bustling dining hall and through room service, reached an intense peak. Although I was still new to the job, I threw myself into the work, knowing that my inexperience might make things harder for the team. But I was determined to do my best. Then, on Los Angeles's day, just when things seemed manageable, a colleague fell ill. We were already short-staffed, so I knew I had to step up. I pushed myself beyond my normal hours, doing everything I could to keep things running smoothly. For a moment, it seemed like we had survived the worst of it until disaster struck. A pipe in the kitchen burst right in the middle of the dinner rush. The kitchen flooded, and with no plumber available on Los Angeles's day, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. The stress was visible on Brian, the hotel manager's face, as he tried to keep everything together. In a moment of desperation, I stepped forward. "Brian, can I try fixing the plumbing?" "I think I can do it," I offered. He looked at me with doubt, but we had no other options. After a brief hesitation, he nodded, giving me the go-ahead. What no one knew was that my time in a science-focused high school had given me a basic understanding of plumbing. With this knowledge, I set to work. Half an hour later, the kitchen was back in order. The flood was gone, and the pipe was fixed. I turned to Brian, breathless, and said, "I've managed to fix it." He rushed over and turned the faucet, his face filled with anticipation. When water flowed smoothly from the tap, the room erupted in smiles and applause. "Great job, James. You're my pride and joy," Brian said warmly. His praise filled me with a sense of accomplishment unlike anything I had experienced before. Growing up with Brian's guidance at the hotel had been life-changing. Together, we had tackled the challenges of that chaotic Los Angeles's day and come out victorious. The sense of fulfillment I felt that day stayed with me and shaped who I became. 20 years passed, and I found myself fully immersed in my role at the hotel, thriving in a career I had built from the ground up. Then, one day, a letter arrived from my mother, breaking the long silence between us. It brought news of my brother Paul's upcoming wedding. Although I had grown distant from both my father and Paul, my mother's heartfelt plea for me to attend tugged at my heartstrings. Reluctantly, I agreed to go. The wedding venue was a lavish hotel, a reflection of Paul and Dad's taste for luxury and extravagance. As I walked in, dressed in my old, reliable suit, I couldn't help but feel out of place. The guests were all members of high society, and their elegance and wealth were apparent in every detail. Paul's bride, a woman of flawless grace, seemed to be the perfect match for his world, perhaps even the result of one of Dad's strategic alliances. In the waiting room, I was surrounded by faces of power and privilege, but I felt like an outsider. I sat quietly on the sidelines, a silent observer, watching the world that I had left behind unfold in front of me. The people around me danced their intricate dance of influence and wealth, but I didn't fit into their rhythm. The life I had built for myself felt far removed from this world, and for a moment, I questioned whether I should have come at all. But as I sat there, unnoticed and unacknowledged, I realized something. I no longer needed to fit into their world or seek their approval. I had carved out a life of my own, far away from the expectations and judgments that had once weighed me down. I wasn't the boy chasing after my father's acceptance anymore. I was James, someone who had found his own path, and that was enough. I locked eyes with two familiar faces, and a sense of unease immediately washed over me. My father's expression was unmistakable pure disapproval. Dad and Paul approached, their presence looming like a shadow. "Why are you here?" Dad's voice was deep, commanding, and filled with an all-too-familiar contempt, stirring memories I'd tried to forget. "Is it so wrong to want to celebrate Paul's wedding?" I replied, trying to keep my tone light, forcing a smile. "Oh, and by the way, congrats, Paul." Paul gave a half-hearted nod, his face conflicted, torn between family loyalty and the tension that had always defined our relationship. Before he could respond, Dad cut in again, his voice sharp as a blade. "What have you been doing all these years?" "No doubt working some worthless job." His words sliced through the air, filled with disdain. "James, you shouldn't be here," Dad continued, his tone now dripping with contempt. Before I could respond, my mother rushed over, clearly desperate to ease the situation. "Come on, James is here to celebrate. No need to be so harsh," she pleaded, her voice shaky but full of hope. But her words were in vain. "Enough, Mom," Dad said, his voice booming with authority, silencing her. "James, let me make this very clear. You are a disgrace. I don't want you ruining Paul's celebration. Get out." Anger boiled inside me, fueled by years of neglect and rejection. I hadn't even wanted to come to this wedding, and now, here I was, humiliated in front of everyone. "Fine, I'm leaving," I declared, my voice steady with resolve as I turned to leave. Just as I was about to walk out, a voice stopped me in my tracks. A wedding staff member hurried over, urgency written all over their face. "Excuse me," they said, slightly out of breath, "we have a problem." An unexpected guest showed up, and we're short on seats and food. I turned back, seeing the tension in the room. Everyone was looking worried. Olivia, the wedding planner, the in-laws, and even my father. They were all scrambling for a solution. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to walk out and leave them to their mess. After all, wasn't this the perfect opportunity to turn my back on the people who had turned their backs on me? But then, memories of the past began to surface. Despite everything, I remembered the times when Paul and I were kids. There were moments rare, but real, when he would find time for me, when we would play together during study breaks, even when Dad's strict rules weighed on us both. Those memories softened my resolve, reminding me that, at least once upon a time, we were brothers, not just rivals. If I walked away now, I'd be no better than the man my father always accused me of being. With a sigh of determination, I turned back to the wedding staff. "Take me to Olivia," I said, my voice firmer now. The staff member's tense expression softened, relieved. I followed them back into the waiting room, reclaiming the space from which I had been so recently expelled. In the center of the room, Olivia, my father, and the bride's father stood with anxious faces, their concerns growing with every passing minute. As I approached, Olivia looked up, surprised but grateful to see me. "James, thank goodness. We really need help," she admitted, explaining the situation with the guest list and the seating arrangements. I took a deep breath, assessing the chaos. Despite everything that had happened, despite Dad's words and Paul's silence, I knew what I had to do. "All right, let's get to work," I said, stepping forward to take control of the situation. For the rest of the evening, I worked alongside Olivia and the other staff, making sure everything went smoothly. As the dinner unfolded without further issues, I couldn't help but notice the subtle glances from Dad and Paul. They didn't say a word, but their silence now felt different, almost as if, for once, they were seeing me in a new light. When the night finally came to an end, I stood at the edge of the reception, watching the happy couple share their first dance. I wasn't part of their world, but for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I had proven to myself more than anyone else that I belonged, not because of their approval, but because I had forged my own way. As I quietly slipped away from the celebration, leaving before anyone could notice, I felt a sense of peace. This wasn't my world anymore, and that was okay. I had found my own place, and for me, that was enough. I approached, locking eyes with my father. His hostility was unmistakable, his demeanor stiff with anger. "Why has James returned?" he demanded, his tone sharp, almost cutting. Before the situation could spiral, Olivia, the wedding planner, quickly stepped in. "General Manager, please, we need your help," she pleaded, her voice filled with urgency. The title clearly caught my father off guard, and I could see the shock in his eyes as I calmly revealed my position. "I've been the general manager of this hotel chain for quite some time," I explained, my voice steady. "Since joining during the company's early days, we've expanded to several hotels and wedding venues across the country. In fact, this very hotel is under my supervision. I think I can handle this," I added confidently, dismissing Dad's looming protests with a wave of my hand. "Dad, I'm busy right now, we'll talk later." Without waiting for a response, I turned to Olivia, determined to get things back on track. "Relax, Olivia. Get the seating sorted, and I'll handle the food situation," I directed, watching the tension ease from her face. "Understood," she replied, her relief palpable. "I'll leave the food to you and take care of everything else." She hurried off to carry out the plan while I stepped out of the room, knowing all eyes were still on me. I headed straight to the kitchen, where my good friend, Chef Brandon, was busy with the day's preparations. "Hey you," I called out as I spotted him. "James, what brings you here?" he asked, curious. "I'm actually a guest today," I explained, shaking my head with a chuckle. "It's my brother's wedding, but we've run into a little problem, we're one meal short. Think you can help us out?" Brandon grinned. "Of course. I'll whip something up. Don't worry about it. Thanks so much. I owe you one, maybe dinner next time," I said, relieved. "Looking forward to it," he replied with a wink, already moving to prepare the missing meal. After tying up a few loose ends, I made my way back to the waiting room. Most of the guests had already moved to the ceremony area, leaving only my parents and the bride's family behind. I approached them and announced, "The issue is resolved, an extra meal is on its way." Relief washed over my mom's face, and the bride's parents smiled gratefully. Even my father, though still conflicted, seemed to be holding back his usual sharp criticism. His pride was clear, though his words were much softer this time. "James, thank you. Because of you, the celebration can go on without a hitch," he said, his gratitude genuine. "All in a day's work as a general manager," I replied with a small smile, feeling a quiet sense of victory as I led them to the ceremony hall. As the lights dimmed and the bride and groom made their grand entrance, I couldn't help but be captivated by their radiance. The ceremony unfolded smoothly, every detail falling into place as if the earlier chaos had never happened. When it was finally time for the meal, I made sure everything was in order, ensuring each guest was served without issue. Only then did I allow myself a quiet sigh of relief, knowing that the day had turned out well. After the ceremony, I found myself in warm conversations with both families. They expressed their heartfelt gratitude, especially the bride's family, who thanked me over and over for stepping in when things seemed to be falling apart. In that moment, as I shared smiles and gratitude with those around me, I remembered why I loved my job. It wasn't just about managing a hotel or overseeing events, it was about being able to make a difference when it mattered most. As they expressed their gratitude, I couldn't help but feel a warm glow in my heart. "James, thank you so much. We had the best day ever, all because of you," they said, their appreciation sincere and heartfelt. "No worries, I'm just glad I could help. Wishing you both all the happiness in the world," I replied with a smile, feeling proud of how the day had turned out. Turning to face my parents and Paul, I was greeted by my mom's beaming expression. "James, you did wonderfully." "Thank you," she praised, her voice full of pride. Paul stepped forward next. He was the first to apologize, his words genuine as he thanked me for stepping in. I couldn't help but smile. "As long as I could help, it's all good," I reassured him, my earlier resentment softening. Finally, I turned to my dad. He stayed silent, his emotions harder to read, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet acknowledgement. Though he said nothing, I could feel that, in his own way, he was grateful. There was a sense of closure in that moment, a realization that despite our differences, we could still find some common ground. Just then, my phone buzzed, signaling more work waiting for me at another hotel in the next town. I glanced at the message and sighed, not with frustration, but with a sense of purpose. Looks like I've got more work to do. But hey, I enjoy it, so no complaints, I said with a grin. "All right, I'm off. You two take care." As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this might be the last time I'd see Paul or Dad for a while, perhaps even for good. The thought lingered, but I didn't look back. I had work to do, and that's where I focused my attention. 5 days after Paul's wedding, I finally had a rare day off. Reclining on my sofa with a steaming cup of coffee, I was enjoying a moment of peace. That tranquility was soon interrupted by the chime of the doorbell. Curious about who it could be, I made my way to the door and was surprised to see Paul standing there. "Paul? What brings you here?" I asked, surprised by his unexpected visit. "Sorry, I got your address from Mom. I wanted to talk to you," Paul explained, his tone cautious. I welcomed him inside, not worrying too much about the state of my home. After all, it was just Paul. As I poured him a cup of coffee, he took a slow sip and commented, "Thank you, smells good." He tried to smile, but I could sense there was more on his mind. As we sat down to talk, Paul's demeanor shifted. His gaze became more intense, and I could tell he had something important to say. After a brief pause, he broke the silence. "I'm really sorry for everything," he said, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. At first, I was taken aback. Paul rarely apologized for anything, and hearing him speak like this left me puzzled. "Hey, it's all right, Paul," I reassured him, trying to ease the tension. But it was clear he had more to say. Paul continued, opening up in a way I had never expected. "You might think I'm the older brother who has it all together, but the truth is I envy you, James." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning, completely catching me off guard. A heavy silence filled the room as his confession hung in the air. For a moment I was speechless. His admission shattered every preconceived notion I had about him. I always saw him as the golden child, the one who had everything I didn't. But here he was, sitting across from me, revealing a side of himself that I had never seen before. It was clear that beneath the surface, Paul had his own struggles. His vulnerability surprised me, leaving me unsure of how to respond at first. All I knew was that this was a turning point in our relationship, a moment that would redefine how I saw him and how we could move forward as brothers. In that moment, everything we'd been through, our rivalry, the distance between us, the unspoken tension seemed to fade away. We were just two brothers, finally understanding each other in a way we never had before. "I never knew you felt that way, Paul," I admitted, feeling a bit guilty as I tried to process what he had just told me. "That's the thing, it's not your fault, James," Paul reassured me, his weak smile showing how much emotion he was holding inside. At that moment, I felt a sense of understanding between us, bridging the gap that had been there for so long. "Paul, I'm sorry I never realized you were struggling too," I confessed, feeling regret for not seeing it sooner. His smile, though faint, said more than words could. "It's really not your fault," he repeated, his voice soft in the quiet room. We finally began talking about the things we'd never said before, and it made our bond stronger. "I admire you for getting through things I can't even imagine," I told him honestly. "But I also want to share my story with you." I could feel the weight of my words as I paused to gather my thoughts. Paul stayed quiet, listening closely, giving me the space to continue. "Breaking away from our parents and becoming independent wasn't easy," I said. "In the beginning it was really tough." As I spoke, I realized we both had faced our own battles. "Yeah, we've both had our share of struggles," Paul agreed, his words sincere. He seemed like he had more to say, but I wasn't sure how to guide him or what advice to give. So I just spoke from the heart. "To be honest, Paul, I think you should do what you really want to do without worrying about Dad," I said, hoping it would help him find some clarity. Paul took in my words, and I could see a sense of relief wash over him. "You're right, James. You've really helped clear my mind." "Thank you," he said, his gratitude clear in his voice. "No, thank you for coming over," I replied, meaning it. I walked him to the door, and before he left, he promised to come back for coffee soon. A month later, I received a letter from Paul. In it, he told me he had decided to leave his career as a lawyer to follow his true passion, glass craftsmanship. Even though Dad didn't approve, Paul found peace in his wife's support and new motivation in the path he had chosen. As I thought about Paul's journey and how our family had changed, I couldn't help but feel proud of the bond we had rebuilt. Lost in my thoughts, I was snapped back to reality by the sound of my phone alarm, signaling the start of another day in the job I had chosen and embraced.
Hi, I'm Kate Hudson. I'm 33 years old and a marketing executive who's worked tirelessly to build a career I'm proud of. I'm also a wife, married for 6 years to Lucas, who's not just my husband, but also my biggest supporter. His unwavering love and encouragement have been my rock, especially when it comes to handling his family dynamics. Let me paint you a picture of the family I married into. There's Roxanne, my well-meaning mother-in-law, who has an almost obsessive love for family traditions. Then there are Lucas's cousins Felix and Mia, genuinely lovely people who have always made me feel welcome. But there's also Rosalie, Lucas's sister, who's, well, let's just call her complicated. Dealing with her has been a real test of my patience. This brings me to the morning of the family reunion. I was in our bedroom, adjusting a new dress in front of the mirror, my mind wandering back to a very difficult chapter of my life just a few months ago. I had been in a hospital bed, frightened and exhausted, as a doctor explained I'd need emergency surgery for endometriosis. It was a condition I'd silently struggled with for years, one that not only brought excruciating pain but also affected my ability to have children. The surgery was a turning point. While it was necessary and improved my health, it left scars, both on my body and on my heart. I chose to keep it private. It was an intensely personal experience, and frankly, I wasn't ready to deal with the inevitable pity or prying questions from Lucas's family. Rosalie, in particular, had a knack for making offhand, thoughtless comments about when Lucas and I would have children. I dreaded the idea of her turning my pain into gossip fodder. Lucas's voice snapped me back to the present. "Mac, you almost ready?" he called from downstairs. "On my way," I replied, taking a deep breath to steady myself. As I walked down, Lucas greeted me with a warm smile and pulled me into a hug. "You look beautiful, honey. How are you feeling about today?" he asked gently. I shrugged. As ready as I'll ever be to face Rosalie. He held me tighter, his voice steady and reassuring. "Remember, I've got your back. No one needs to know about the surgery, unless you're ready to share." Lucas always knew just what to say to make me feel supported. The family reunion was a long-standing tradition, held every year at a picturesque lake house that had been in the family for generations. It was supposed to be about reconnecting, but over time, it had begun to feel more like stepping into a minefield. As we drove to the lake house, Lucas and I reminisced about past reunions to lighten the mood. "Remember last year, when Rosalie spilled red wine all over your white dress?" Lucas said with a grin. "Oh, I remember," I replied, laughing despite myself. "She said it was an accident, but I'm still not sure I believe her." Lucas shook his head. "Well, if she tries anything today, just let me handle it." We pulled up to the lake house, its weathered wooden beams and wraparound porch as familiar as ever. The smell of grilled food and the sound of laughter drifted through the air. As I stepped out of the car, I adjusted my dress one last time and took another deep breath. This wasn't just a family gathering. For me, it was a test of patience, resilience, and the power of Lucas and me as a team. Whatever came our way, Rosalie's remarks, the prying questions, or the unspoken struggles we carried, I knew we'd face it together. And with that thought, I took Lucas's hand and stepped into the fray, ready to navigate another chapter in this messy, beautiful, and sometimes challenging life. As we drove closer to the lake house, I turned to Lucas and sighed. "Do you remember how she announced my job situation before I could even explain it myself? The company downsizing was hard enough without her turning it into public drama." Lucas let out a deep breath, his fingers gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "Yeah, Rosalie has a way of making everything harder than it needs to be," he replied. "She really knows how to make me feel small," I muttered, my hand unconsciously drifting to my abdomen, where the scars from my surgery were hidden. Lucas reached over, his warm hand squeezing mine. "Not this year," he promised firmly. When we arrived, Roxanne greeted us at the door with her usual cheerful energy. "Kate, sweetie, you look wonderful. Come on in. We've missed you too." Her warmth was comforting, and I smiled as we stepped into the house. But my relief was short-lived. Almost immediately, my eyes locked with Rosalie's. She stood on the far side of the room, wearing a smirk that made my stomach tighten. "Well, look who's here," she said, sauntering over with a confidence that always put me on edge. "Kate, dear, how have you been? Any news to share?" Her eyes flicked to my midsection, lingering just long enough to send a clear message. My chest tightened as anxiety bubbled up, but before I could say anything, Lucas stepped in. "We're doing great, Rosalie. How about you?" he said, his arm protectively wrapping around my waist. Rosalie raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed with Lucas's attempt to deflect her question. "Oh, just peachy," she said with a sly grin. "Always curious to see what's new with you two. No little ones on the way yet." Before I could respond, or let her comment sink in further, her husband Ken appeared. He looked as awkward as ever, standing just behind her. "Hey, guys. Good to see you," he said, his voice a little too eager. "Rosalie, honey, why don't we go help your mom in the kitchen?" Rosalie sighed, clearly annoyed, but allowed herself to be led away. As soon as they disappeared into the other room, I exhaled slowly, finally able to breathe again. "Thanks for that," I whispered to Lucas. He kissed my forehead gently. "Always," he said. "Now come on, let's go say hi to Felix and Mia before Rosalie finds something else to comment on." The sun was high in the sky as I stepped out onto the back porch, the fresh air helping to calm my nerves. The lake sparkled in the distance, and the sound of laughter filled the air. Family members were scattered across the lawn, some chatting by the grill, others playing horseshoes near the dock. I leaned against the porch railing, taking it all in, when I heard Felix's voice. "Hey, Kate. Come join us," he called, waving from the volleyball net he was setting up. I smiled and walked over, grateful for the distraction. "You guys setting up for a game?" "Yep," Felix said, grinning as he handed me a volleyball. "We need one more player. You in." For a moment I allowed myself to relax. This was what family reunions were supposed to feel like, fun, lighthearted, and full of love. I could handle this. But little did I know, this was just the beginning of what would turn into the most eventful family reunion yet. As I served the ball, I felt a sense of hope rise within me. The challenges Rosalie brought to the table weren't going away anytime soon, but with Lucas by my side and moments like these to ground me, I knew I could face whatever the day had in store. I smiled, grateful for the distraction. "Sure, just don't expect any Olympic-level moves from me," I said with a laugh as I joined the volleyball game. The laughter and light-hearted banter among my teammates were exactly what I needed. For a little while, I could pretend the tension in the air didn't exist. But I could feel Rosalie's eyes on me, watching from where she sat with a group of aunts at the patio table. Her gaze was sharp, cutting through the fun like a blade. I tried to shake off the unease, focusing instead on the game and the joy of simply being in the moment. After a while, Roxanne's cheerful voice rang out. "All right, everyone, time for the family photo." We all gathered near the lake, jostling and laughing as we tried to find our spots. The lake's calm surface shimmered under the afternoon sun, a picturesque backdrop for what should have been a beautiful memory. I ended up near the front, Lucas's arm protectively wrapped around my waist. His presence was a comfort as always. The photographer gave us a moment to settle, raising his camera. "Okay, everyone smile." But just as the shutter was about to click, I felt a sharp tug on my dress. "Oh, Kate, your dress is all wrinkled. Let me fix that for you." Rosalie's voice rang out, dripping with fake sweetness. Before I could react, she yanked hard on the fabric. A loud, unmistakable rip filled the air. For a split second, everything froze. A cool rush of air hit my skin, and I looked down in horror. My dress had torn open, exposing the scars on my abdomen, scars from the surgery I had fought so hard to keep private. Gasps rippled through the group. I stood there, frozen in shock and humiliation. My mind was spinning, unable to process what had just happened. "Oh my God," someone whispered, the words slicing through the silence. Lucas was the first to move. He quickly shrugged off his jacket, draping it over me to cover my exposed skin. His voice was sharp and furious as he turned to Rosalie. "What the hell, Rosalie?" Rosalie's laughter rang out, harsh and mocking. "Oops. I guess I don't know my own strength," she said, her tone unapologetic. "Sorry about that, Kate." The fake apology stung almost as much as the embarrassment. My cheeks burned, tears already stinging my eyes. I couldn't bear to look at anyone. Without a word, I turned and ran. The voices calling after me blurred into the background as I bolted into the house. My legs carried me up the stairs to the nearest bedroom. Once inside, I slammed the door shut and locked it. Sliding down to the floor, I hugged my knees to my chest as sobs racked my body. The humiliation, the pain, the effort it took to keep my struggles private, all of it came crashing down. A few minutes passed before there was a soft knock on the door. "It's me, Lucas," came his gentle voice. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, wiping at my tear-streaked face. Then slowly, I unlocked the door. Lucas slipped inside and immediately wrapped me in his arms, holding me close as I dissolved into tears again. "I'm so sorry, babe," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You didn't deserve that, none of it." I clung to him, my face buried in his chest. "Why does she hate me so much?" I choked out. "Why would she do this?" Lucas held me tighter. "I don't know, but this isn't on you. She's the one who's cruel, Kate. Not you. You're the strongest person I know, and I won't let her hurt you like this again." For a while, we sat there in silence, his arms around me, a shield against the world. Slowly, the tears began to subside, and I found comfort in his presence. "I don't want to go back out there," I admitted softly. "You don't have to," Lucas said. "We can leave right now if you want. Or we can stay, and I'll handle everything. Whatever you need, I'm here." His words were steady, giving me the strength I didn't know I still had. Taking a deep breath, I sat up and looked at him. "Let's stay," I said, surprising even myself. "I'm not going to let her ruin this for me. For us." Lucas smiled, pride shining in his eyes. "That's my girl." With his hand in mine, I felt a flicker of resolve ignite. Rosalie may have tried to break me, but she didn't realize that I wasn't standing alone. Together, Lucas and I could face anything, even her. "I can't believe she did that," I whispered, my voice shaky as I buried my face in Lucas's chest. Everyone saw. "Lucas, they all know now." His arms tightened around me, his hand gently stroking my hair. "It's okay," he murmured, his voice steady and calming. "You have nothing to be ashamed of, Kate. Not a thing." We stayed like that for what felt like forever, his quiet strength grounding me as I tried to piece myself back together. But then, muffled voices broke through the silence. "Rosalie, how could you do such a thing?" Roxanne's voice was thick with disappointment. "Oh, come on, Mom," Rosalie shot back, her tone defensive and dismissive. "It was just a joke. How was I supposed to know she was hiding some big secret under there? Maybe if she wasn't so uptight all the time." I felt Lucas tense beside me, his jaw tightening in anger. "I should go out there," he said, his voice low and filled with frustration. I grabbed his arm. "No, don't. It'll only make things worse," I pleaded, my heart racing at the thought of an even bigger scene. He sighed, pulling me closer. "You're right. But we can't let her get away with this." His words sparked something deep within me, a new determination I hadn't felt before. I pulled away slightly and met his eyes. "I'm done," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "I'm done letting her walk all over me. This ends now." This wasn't just about standing up to Rosalie anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. No more hiding. No more shame. It was time to face this, scars and all. In the days following the reunion, I barely left the house. The humiliation replayed over and over in my mind, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rosalie's smug smirk and heard the gasps from the crowd. Lucas did his best to comfort me, but even his love and reassurances couldn't quiet the storm raging inside me. Finally, one afternoon, I picked up the phone and called my best friend, Leah. "I can't take it anymore," I said, my voice cracking as tears welled up again. "Oh, honey," Leah said, her voice filled with concern. "I'm coming over right now." Within an hour, she was at my door. As soon as I let her in, I collapsed into her arms, all the emotions I'd been holding and pouring out. Once we were settled on the couch, I told her everything, years of pent-up frustration about Rosalie's bullying and manipulation. "She's always putting me down," I explained, my voice trembling, "making me feel small, like I don't belong." But this was a new low. Leah listened intently, her brow furrowed in thought. She let me vent until the words ran out, her presence as comforting as a warm blanket. When I finally finished, she took my hands in hers and said firmly, "Kate, you can't let her keep doing this. It's time to stand up for yourself." I sighed. But how? She's so good at twisting things around, making herself look like the victim. It's like fighting a losing battle. Leah's eyes lit up with determination. "Then we fight smart," she said, her tone resolute. "We gather evidence. Build a case against her. Show everyone who she really is." Her words sparked an idea, one I hadn't considered before. Maybe it was time to stop playing defense and start taking action. Over the next few weeks, Leah and I worked together. Every time Rosalie sent a snarky text or made a passive-aggressive comment in the family group chat, we documented it. Every time she twisted the truth or tried to make me look bad, we made note of it. At first, it felt strange, like I was plotting revenge. But Leah reminded me this wasn't about revenge. It was about accountability. "This isn't just for you, Kate," she said one evening as we reviewed our growing file of evidence. "This is for anyone else she's hurt or might hurt in the future. People like Rosalie thrive because no one ever calls them out." Her words gave me strength. Slowly, I began to feel like I was taking back control, not just from Rosalie, but from the fear and shame that had held me captive for so long. By the time the next family gathering rolled around, I felt ready. I didn't know what the outcome would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let Rosalie or anyone else define me anymore. The day of the gathering, I walked into the room with my head held high. My scars, both physical and emotional, were still there, but they no longer felt like weaknesses. They were proof of my strength, my resilience, and my ability to rise above the pain. When Rosalie tried her usual tricks, making a cutting remark about my outfit, I calmly called her out, using the evidence Leah and I had gathered to back me up. For the first time, she didn't have a clever comeback. For the first time, the spotlight wasn't on me, it was on her. And for the first time, I felt truly free. As Leah and I brainstormed our next steps, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. A text lit up the screen. It was from Ken, Rosalie's husband. I hesitated, unsure of what to make of his message. Curious but cautious, I agreed to meet him at a local cafe later that day. When I arrived, Ken was already seated in a corner booth, his fingers nervously drumming the table. He looked up, his expression a mix of guilt and unease. "Kate," he began, his voice low, "I'm so sorry about what happened at the reunion. But there's more you need to know about Rosalie." I leaned forward, my stomach twisting in anticipation. Over the next hour, Ken revealed a troubling side of Rosalie's behavior, patterns I hadn't fully understood until now. He shared stories of her manipulation, not just toward me but toward him and their children. He spoke about her strange obsession with money and hinted that something wasn't right at her workplace. "I think she might be doing something illegal at work," he whispered, glancing over his shoulder nervously. "But I don't have proof yet." By the time we parted ways, I felt a new sense of clarity. Rosalie's cruelty wasn't just a personal vendetta against me, it was a pattern of toxicity that spread through every part of her life. Armed with this new information, I threw myself into investigation mode. If Ken's suspicions were right, there was more at stake than my own feelings. This was about protecting everyone Rosalie had hurt. I began by reaching out to Rosalie's former colleagues, carefully piecing together her history at work. What I found was shocking: reports of inappropriate behavior, conflicts with coworkers, and unexplained financial discrepancies. Next, I combed through her social media accounts, finding subtle signs of emotional manipulation in her posts about her children. They weren't overt, but once I knew what to look for, the patterns were unmistakable. But the real turning point came when I started talking to other family members. One afternoon, Felix pulled me aside at a coffee shop, his expression troubled. Kate, he began, hesitating. I don't know if I should tell you this, but what is it? I urged, bracing myself. He sighed, then continued, Rosalie's been spreading nasty rumors about you and Lucas. About why you don't have kids yet.
My heart sank.
What kind of rumors? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Felix hesitated again, but when he finally told me, the words hit like a punch to the gut. Rosalie had twisted our struggles with fertility into a cruel narrative, painting me as someone selfish and career-obsessed, uninterested in starting a family. And that, as it turned out, was just the tip of the iceberg. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered. Rosalie had been spinning lies and half-truths for years, turning family members against each other with carefully planted seeds of gossip. Mia was the next to come forward, sharing her own experiences of Rosalie's manipulation. She's always been jealous of you, Kate, Mia explained during one of our late-night phone calls. I think she sees you as a threat. You're everything she's not. Successful, confident, loved. It eats at her. Her words sent a chill down my spine. How could someone carry so much envy and resentment? As the pieces of the puzzle came together, my confidence grew. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about protecting our family from the toxic influence Rosalie had wielded for far too long. One evening, as Lucas and I reviewed everything we'd uncovered, the gravity of our decision hit me. The table in front of us was covered with notes, screenshots, and testimonies from family members. It was overwhelming and exhausting, but also empowering. Lucas looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of pride and concern. Are you sure you want to do this, Mac? He asked gently. Once we confront her, there's no going back. I took a deep breath, meeting his gaze. I'm sure, I said firmly. This has gone on long enough. She can't keep hurting people like this. Not you, not me, not anyone else. It's time for the truth to come out. Lucas nodded, his hand covering mine. I'm with you every step of the way, he said. With his support, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Rosalie had thrived in the shadows for too long, but the light was finally about to shine through. I took a deep breath, my mind racing with thoughts of everything Rosalie had done, not just to me, but to so many others. The lies, the manipulation, the pain she had caused were no longer secrets. They were truths I was ready to confront. I'm sure, I said firmly, meeting Lucas's steady gaze. It's time to end this once and for all. As we finalized our plan, a strange mix of anticipation and dread washed over me. The next family gathering wasn't just another event. It was the moment we had been building toward. This would be the showdown. Rosalie had no idea what was coming, but I felt ready, armed with the truth and surrounded by the people who mattered most. Walking into Roxanne's house for the family gathering, I felt a surge of confidence I hadn't experienced in years. Lucas squeezed my hand reassuringly as we stepped into the living room, where everyone was already assembled. Rosalie's sharp eyes locked on me the moment we entered. A smirk tugged at her lips. Well, if it isn't the star of our last get-together, she sneered. Ready for another show, Kate? Her words stung, but I didn't let them throw me off balance. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Actually, Rosalie, I said, my voice calm but firm, I think it's time for your show to end. The room fell silent. Every eye turned to us, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Slowly and methodically, I began to speak, revealing everything I had uncovered. I presented the evidence. Rosalie's workplace fraud, the financial irregularities Ken had hinted at, and the toxic lies she had spread among family members to pit us against one another. You've been manipulating all of us, I said, my voice steady. Spreading lies, turning us against each other, for what? Your own amusement? Your own gain? The weight of my words hung in the air as the family sat in stunned silence. I could see the disbelief in their faces, the slow realization of just how deeply Rosalie had woven her web of deceit. Roxanne's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes filling with tears. Oh my God, she whispered, her voice trembling. How did I not see this? Ken stood up next, his face pale and resolute. I can't do this anymore, Rosalie, he said, his voice breaking. I've tried to protect our kids from this chaos, but it's too much. I'm leaving you, and I'm going to seek full custody of the children. Rosalie's carefully constructed image shattered before our eyes. Her usual sharp was nowhere to be found as she sputtered, struggling to defend herself. But the evidence was overwhelming, and the family's support for her was gone. Roxanne approached me after the confrontation, her hands trembling as she clasped mine. "Kate," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion, "I'm so sorry. I should have seen this sooner. Thank you for being brave enough to speak up." In the days that followed, the consequences of Rosalie's actions snowballed. Her company launched an internal investigation, fueled by the evidence Ken and I had provided, and it wasn't long before she was terminated. Rumors swirled of potential legal repercussions, but I stayed out of that part. My focus wasn't on revenge, it was on moving forward. The family rallied around me, finally seeing Rosalie for who she truly was. Felix and Mia opened up, sharing stories of their own struggles with Rosalie's manipulation. It was as if a weight had been lifted from all of us. For the first time in years, our family felt united. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Months later, I stood in my office, gazing out at the city skyline. The hustle and bustle of downtown life felt like a reflection of my own world, thriving, busy, and full of possibility. My career was flourishing, but more importantly, I was flourishing. Lucas and I had started talking seriously about adoption. The thought of growing our family no longer filled me with dread or anxiety. Rosalie's judgment, which had once loomed over every decision I made, no longer held any power over me. I thought about Rosalie now, jobless, divorced, and estranged from most of the family. While I didn't take joy in her misfortune, I couldn't deny the sense of relief I felt knowing she could no longer hurt us. She had built her life on lies and manipulation, and now she was facing the consequences of her choices. As I reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point, I felt a deep sense of pride. The scars on my body, once a source of shame, were now a reminder of my resilience. They told a story of strength, growth, and survival. With a small smile, I turned back to my desk. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time, I felt like I was living it on my own terms, free from the shadows of the past. I turned back to my desk, ready to handle whatever challenges came my way. I wasn't hiding anymore or making myself small. I was standing tall, scars and all, finally free to be my true self. Have you ever had to confront a toxic family member? How did it change your relationships? Share your story in the comments. If you enjoyed this story about standing up to manipulation, don't forget to like and subscribe for more inspiring content. Running a hotel wasn't just a job for me. It was my life. I'm Emma, and this hotel was my world until he walked in. You couldn't miss him. A young man in a suit that screamed wealth, his eyes glued to an expensive phone. He checked in with a smile that could knock you off your feet. "Good evening, I'm Ryan," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I'm here for a couple of nights. Anything interesting happening around here?" I found myself smiling back, a little taken by his charm. "Well, Ryan, the city's full of surprises. Depends on what you're looking for," I replied, handing him his key. Our chat was short, but it sparked something. Maybe it was his curiosity, or the way he seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. He didn't stay long, but when he checked out, he left a note. "Enjoyed our talk. Care to continue it over dinner?" It read. I hesitated, not used to mixing work with my personal life, but something about him intrigued me. We met at a local restaurant, a cozy spot where the noise of chatter and clinking glasses made it feel like we were in our own little world. "You really have this place running smoothly, don't you, Emma?" he said with a smile as we sat down. I laughed, feeling surprisingly comfortable. "Guess you could say I've had some practice." Dinner passed quickly as we talked about everything and nothing. He seemed like an open book, sharing stories of his travels and investments. When the conversation turned to me, I found myself opening up more than usual. I told him about losing my parents, about how it's just been me and Rachel against the world since I was 23. That's a lot to carry, Emma. You must be incredibly strong, he said, his eyes showing a mix of admiration and something I couldn't quite figure out. I shrugged it off, saying, "We all play the hand we're dealt, right? Rachel has been my priority. Our parents left us a little something, and I've been careful with it, growing it bit by bit." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "That's impressive. You've got a good head on your shoulders." As the night went on, I realized I hadn't laughed this much in a long time. But when I tried to learn more about him, about his family, he skillfully changed the subject. "My folks and I don't see eye to eye. Let's just say they have their ideas about life, and I have mine," he said, a shadow crossing his face. I didn't push for more details. We all have our stories and our scars. As the evening came to an end, I realized I didn't want it to. There was something about Ryan that made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. Life with Ryan felt like a whirlwind, with every day bringing something new. Each moment together was filled with laughter and dreams about the future. He had a way of making the ordinary feel special, turning simple dinners into unforgettable nights. "Ryan, I still can't believe how fast everything is happening," I said one evening as we sat in our favorite little cafe, the one with dim lights and cozy corners. He reached across the table and took my hand. "Emma, when something feels right, why wait? I've never been so sure of anything in my life," he said, looking at me with an intensity that sent shivers down my spine. "I know," I replied, "but everything is moving so quickly. It's a lot to take in." He gently squeezed my hand. "I understand, but trust me, Emma, I'm here for the long haul. I want to build a life with you, a future. And I want to start by making our wedding day the most memorable day of our lives." The way he talked about our wedding, with so much passion and certainty, made it hard not to get swept up in his excitement. He described a day so beautiful and lavish it took my breath away. "Imagine it, Emma, a ceremony no one will forget, a celebration of our love. It's going to be perfect," he said, his voice full of excitement. "And the honeymoon?" I asked, a bit curious and nervous. "You mentioned something about the most expensive hotel in the world?" His smile grew wider. "Yes, it's all part of the plan. But I need you to trust me. Let's take this leap together, your savings for the wedding, my funds for the honeymoon, and our future home. We'll make this a reality." I hesitated, the practical side of me wanting to be cautious. But when I looked into his eyes, full of love and promise, I found myself nodding. "Okay, Ryan, let's do it. Let's make this wedding a day to remember." As the weeks flew by, planning the wedding took over our lives. Ryan was a man of action, handling every detail to ensure our day would be nothing short of spectacular. Watching him so full of energy and determination, I couldn't help but fall even deeper in love. "Ryan, you're amazing. The way you're handling everything, I don't even know how to thank you," I said, feeling overwhelmed by it all. One evening, as we went over the guest list and the lavish menu Ryan had planned, I voiced my thoughts. He pulled me close, wrapping his arms around me. "Emma, seeing you happy is all the thanks I need. This wedding is just the beginning. Our life together will be even more beautiful." But in the midst of all the excitement, doubt sometimes crept in, whispering questions late at night. Was I moving too fast? Was I getting carried away by the romance? Each time those thoughts surfaced, Ryan's reassurances were there to calm me. His words and promises were like an anchor, keeping me steady in the storm of uncertainty. Wedding preparations filled my days, but in the whirlwind of cake tastings and choosing flowers, I knew I needed Rachel, my sister and confidant, by my side. Since our parents passed, it had always been us against the world, and her opinion meant everything to me, especially now. I called her, hoping she could take a break from her job at the cafe. Hey Rachel, think you can ditch the aprons and coffee smells for some tulle and satin today? I joked, my voice full of hope. Rachel's laughter came through the phone, light and familiar. For you, sis, I'll trade coffee stains for bridal trains any day. Give me an hour to finish up here, and I'm all yours. The bridal shop was a wonderland of white and ivory, with dresses cascading like waterfalls of lace and silk. As I tried on gowns, Rachel's presence was a calming force in the storm of satin and sequins. That one, Emma, it's like it was made for you, Rachel said, her eyes lighting up as I stepped out of the dressing room in a gown that felt just right. I looked at my reflection, the dress hugging every curve and flowing to the floor in soft fabric. You think? I feel, I don't know, like a real bride, I admitted, a smile spreading across my face. Rachel's grin matched mine, but for a brief moment, I noticed a shadow pass over her face, quick and troubling. Before I could ask, she was up and pulling a dress off the rack. Mind if I give this one a try? Just for fun, Rachel said, holding up a stunning gown that shimmered with every movement. I laughed, surprised and delighted. Planning on eloping, are you? Or is there a mystery man you've been hiding from me? Rachel's laugh, usually so carefree, had a hint of something I couldn't quite place. I couldn't quite understand it. Oh, Emma, you know me, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. But a girl can dream, right? Rachel joked, though her eyes quickly darted away, hiding something. The day continued with a mix of laughter and whispers of silk, but Rachel's mood seemed to change suddenly. Her usual bubbly self was replaced by moments of distraction. Everything okay, Rachel? You seem a bit off today, I asked gently, worried by her behavior. She quickly brushed it off, waving her hand as if to erase my concerns. It's nothing, really just the chaos at the cafe. You know how it gets, Rachel assured me, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. As we left the bridal shop, the weight of whatever she was hiding seemed to hang between us, creating a tension we couldn't quite navigate. I wanted to believe it was just pre-wedding stress or maybe a problem with a difficult customer, but deep down, I felt it was something more. That night, as I lay in bed, the excitement of finding the perfect dress was overshadowed by my worry about Rachel's behavior. She had always been an open book to me, but now it felt like there were pages I couldn't read, words hidden from view. As the wedding day approached, the joy I should have felt was mixed with a growing sense of unease. Rachel and I had always faced everything together, but now it felt like there was a gap between us, filled with secrets and unanswered questions. Little did I know, the answers to those questions were about to turn my world upside down. It seemed like an ordinary day, or so I thought, until Ryan left his phone buzzing and forgotten on the kitchen counter. As I tidied up the apartment, the constant notifications nagged at me, a persistent reminder that something was off. The phone wasn't even locked, which surprised me, but that was nothing compared to the shock I felt when I opened it. The messages between Ryan and Rachel hit me like a punch to the gut. Each word was a betrayal, tearing through my heart. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning to push me aside like I meant nothing, like all the years of sisterhood with Rachel were worth less than dirt to them. I read Rachel's message over and over, the one where she confessed she was pregnant with Ryan's child. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Can't believe we pulled this off. She's such a fool, falling for every lie. And now, with the baby, we can finally be together, just as we planned. The world around me seemed to spin, a whirlwind of lies and betrayal. Ryan's reply was just as cruel, declaring his love for Rachel and his excitement to see me humiliated, pushed out of my own wedding. She's just a naive cash cow. Can't wait to get rid of her and start our real life together. This wedding will be perfect, thanks to her money, he wrote. I sat there, the phone heavy in my hand, a storm of emotions raging inside me: betrayal, anger, disbelief. But above all, a cold determination started to take root. They thought they could use me and throw me away like I didn't matter. But they were wrong. I would show them the price of underestimating Emma Anderson. When Ryan came back, his carefree attitude felt like a slap in the face. "Hey, babe, did I miss any important calls?" he asked casually, picking up his phone. I forced a smile, my insides churning with anger. "Nope, just the usual stuff. Busy day," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. He flashed that charming smile, the one I now knew was just a mask. "As always, but nothing's more important than coming back to you," he said, leaning in for a kiss. I had to force myself not to pull away. From that moment on, I played the role of the clueless fiancé perfectly. I smiled, nodded, and went along with all the wedding plans. But behind the scenes, I was plotting my revenge on the four people who had betrayed me so deeply. Each day was a test of my will, a balancing act between the part one had to play and the burning fury inside me. But I wouldn't let them see me break. I would wait for the right moment, and then they would learn the true cost of their betrayal. As I lay in bed each night, the image of Ryan and Rachel's deceitful faces was etched into my mind. I made a silent vow they would pay for what they had done, and their twisted game would be their downfall. I was no longer just the betrayed fiancé. I was the one planning their downfall. My revenge would be careful, detailed, and oh so satisfying. The days leading up to the wedding felt unreal. On the surface, everything was perfect: the flowers, the guest list, the dress, but underneath, a storm of anger and betrayal was building inside me. Ryan was his usual self, all smiles and affection, completely unaware of the disaster headed his way. "Emma, everything's coming together so beautifully. This wedding is going to be the talk of the town," he said one evening as we reviewed the final details. I nodded, my smile polished and practiced. "Yes, it's going to be a day to remember," I replied, with a meaning he couldn't possibly understand. Facing Rachel was harder. The sister I had once loved and protected was now a stranger to me, her every word and action a reminder of her betrayal. But I kept my mask on, pretending to be the loving sister who knew nothing of the knife she had put in my back. "Emma, you're handling everything so well. I don't know how you do it," Rachel said one day as we finalized the seating arrangements. I looked at her, the sister I thought I knew, and forced a laugh. "Oh, Rachel, you know me, I've always had a knack for organizing chaos," I said, the irony not lost on me. As the wedding day approached, the tension became almost unbearable, like walking a tightrope with careful precision. Ryan's phone was now always close to him, his conversations hushed and hurried, but it didn't matter, I already knew enough. The morning of the wedding was clear and bright, a perfect day for a beautiful disaster. As I got ready, the reflection in the mirror showed a serene and composed bride, but behind the veil and makeup was a woman on a mission, no longer a pawn in someone else's game. "Rachel's running late, huh?" Ryan remarked casually as he adjusted his tie. I met his gaze in the mirror, my eyes revealing nothing. "Yes, but she'll be here. She wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, the double meaning clear in my voice. He nodded, clueless to the tension beneath the surface. "Well, she's always been a bit unpredictable, but today is about us, Emma. Our new beginning." I turned to face him, my smile a masterpiece of calm. "Yes, Ryan. A new beginning indeed," I said, steeling myself for what was about to happen. As I walked down the aisle, the eyes of friends and family were on me, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. I knew this was at the calm before the storm was over, and the moment of truth had arrived. The vows were ready, the guests were watching, and everything was set. It was time for the truth to come crashing down and for the real show to begin. Standing next to Ryan in front of the priest, my heart was a mix of hope and fear. The vows, a promise of forever, were about to be shattered in the most brutal way. The guests, unaware of the storm brewing, watched us with smiles and teary eyes. But then, something unimaginable happened. Rachel, dressed in a bridal gown just like mine, stormed down the aisle. Her eyes met mine, not with sisterly love, but with a cold determination that sent a chill through me. Move aside, Emma. I'm the one who deserves to be here. Ryan loves me, and the child I'm carrying is his, Rachel declared, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. The room erupted into whispers and gasps as the guests looked at each other in confusion and disbelief. Ryan, instead of showing shock or regret, let out a hearty laugh, his true nature showing through his polished facade. Well said, Rachel. Emma, you've been a good host, but this is where your part ends. Why don't you join the audience? This is Rachel's moment now, Ryan said, his words dripping with mockery and contempt. The audacity of their betrayal, so public and so cruel, sent a shockwave through the crowd. But as the reality of the situation sank in, my reaction surprised everyone, including myself. I looked at Ryan, then at Rachel, and smiled. Of course, why not? I wouldn't want to miss the show after all I did pay for it, I said, my voice calm, hiding the storm inside me. Rachel and Ryan exchanged confused glances, clearly not expecting such a composed response. The guests were baffled too, their eyes darting between us, trying to make sense of the surreal scene unfolding before them. As Emma fully took a seat among the guests, my head held high, the whispers grew louder. What's she up to? Is she really going to let this happen? The questions buzzed around the room like a swarm of bees, but I remained serene, a statue amidst the chaos. Ryan and Rachel, now standing together at the altar, looked unsettled. My calm demeanor had thrown them off. Their plan to humiliate and discard me wasn't going as they had expected. What's your game, Emma? Why are you so calm? Ryan asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and concern. I met his gaze, my smile never wavering. No game, Ryan. Just enjoying the fruits of my labor. Please go ahead. I'm eager to see how this plays out, I replied, my words as sharp as a knife hidden in velvet. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere had changed. The guests watched with a mix of shock and anticipation, unsure if they were witnessing a wedding or the start of something dramatic. As Rachel and Ryan exchanged vows, the words felt empty, a mockery of the sacred promises they were supposed to be. Sitting there, surrounded by friends and family who were struggling to understand what was happening, I knew this was just the beginning. The real show was yet to come, and Rachel and Ryan, in their arrogance and deceit, had unknowingly set themselves up for their own downfall. As the priest asked if anyone objected, the doors suddenly burst open. A woman, older and more worn than Ryan, stormed in, her eyes blazing with anger. Stop this wedding right now, she demanded, her voice cutting through the silence like a knife. Ryan's face turned pale, his eyes wide with shock. Megan, what are you doing here? He stammered, the mask of the perfect groom slipping away. Megan, Ryan's legal wife, as I had discovered, marched up to the altar. I'm here to stop you from making an even bigger fool of yourself and these people. Emma, you deserve to know the truth, she said, turning to me with a sympathetic look. The guests murmured among themselves, the scandal unfolding before them more gripping than any soap opera. Rachel clutched her stomach, her face a mix of shock and fear. Megan continued, her voice strong and clear. Ryan is a liar and a cheat. He's drowning in debt, his investments failed, and he's been using all of you to dig himself out. And Rachel, you poor girl, you're just another pawn in his game. The room erupted into chaos, the guests rising from their seats, whispers growing louder. Ryan tried to speak, but his words were lost in the uproar. I stood up, my heart pounding, but my voice steady. "There's more," I announced, silencing the room. "I hired a private detective after I found out about Ryan and Rachel's affair. Not only is Ryan already married and drowning in debt, but he's also been hiding a child he's never supported." Rachel's face crumpled as the reality of her situation hit her. "Ryan, is this true? Tell me she's lying," she pleaded, her voice breaking. Ryan, now pale and defeated, had no words. His lies and deceit were all laid bare for the world to see. But the final blow was yet to come. As the guests processed the revelations, Ryan's parents, two stern and imposing figures, entered the room. I had contacted them, told them everything, and now they were here to confront the son who had brought shame to their family. Ryan's father, a man of few words, spoke with a voice full of disappointment and anger. "Ryan, you are no son of mine. Your actions today and in the past have shown your true character. You are cut off from our family and our fortune." As the room fell into an uneasy silence, I looked at Ryan, Rachel, and the shattered dreams they had tried to build on lies. The pain of betrayal still hurt, but standing there on what was supposed to be my happiest day, I knew this was not the end of my story. In the days that followed, I found myself in court, seeking justice for the damage Ryan had caused. The courtroom felt like a different world, a place where my pain and humiliation were turned into legal terms and paperwork. "Ryan, you not only broke a promise, but you also shattered trust and took advantage of my generosity. You owe me more than an apology, you owe me compensation for turning my life upside down," I said firmly, my voice echoing in the quiet courtroom. The judge's gavel sounded like thunder in the tense silence. "The court finds in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is hereby ordered to pay $75,000 in damages for the distress and financial loss caused," he declared. His words were a balm to my wounded spirit. As I walked out of the courtroom, the burden of the past months felt lighter. Justice had been served, but the journey to healing was just beginning. Ryan's troubles didn't end with me. Megan, his legal wife, driven by hurt and anger, launched her own legal battle, demanding compensation for his infidelity and neglect of their child. The once suave and confident man was now trapped in a web of his own making, his lies and deceit finally catching up to him. Rachel, my sister, the person I had trusted and loved more than anyone, found herself alone and abandoned. Ryan had fled the city, leaving her to face the consequences of their actions. She was pregnant and scared, a far cry from the carefree and happy girl she once was. "Emma, I know I don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but I'm lost and I don't know what to do," Rachel pleaded one day, her eyes filled with tears. I looked at her, the sister I once would have done anything for. "Rachel, you were my family, my blood, but what you did isn't something I can just forget or forgive. You made your choices, and now you have to live with them, just like I'm living with mine." The gap between us wasn't just physical. It was a deep chasm of betrayal and hurt, too wide and too deep to ever cross again. Life went on, but the scars from those painful months remained. I focused on rebuilding my life, finding peace in the simple things. I had loved, lost, trusted, and been betrayed, but through it all, I survived. Looking back on everything that had happened, I realized the most important journey was the one I was taking within myself, a journey of healing, rediscovering my strength, and learning to trust and love again. I've come to a stark realization. Owen lacks any sense of responsibility or compassion. It's clear now that I'll have to take action. I've decided to stay in this house with my parents, and Owen will need to leave. Ever since we got married, Owen has depended on me for everything. Now, despite my efforts and the fact that I pay $4,000 a month for rent, he's trying to force me out of my own home. This is my breaking point. For months, I've been contemplating divorce, but Owen's selfishness and cruel remarks have sealed my decision. I told him firmly, I will leave this house. Yes. But for now, you need to go. Quickly. He simply shrugged and replied, Fine. I'll be out tonight and back tomorrow evening. Just make sure you're gone by then. The nerve of him. I asked, Don't you even care to check what I might take with me? His response? Don't touch my equipment. Do whatever you want with the rest of the stuff. His dismissive attitude left me stunned but also resolute. If he's giving me free rein to handle the household items, I might as well use this opportunity wisely. Perhaps it's time Owen experiences the consequences of his behavior. I've already started planning. If needed, I'll hire a removal service to pack up everything I care about. And Owen? He'll finally get a taste of his own medicine. For context, here's a bit about my situation. I'm Erica, and I'm 31 years old, a graduate from a prestigious program, and I work as a researcher at a well-known company. My career is stable, and my income is respectable for my age. With my earnings, I can afford to live in a luxurious apartment that costs $4,000 per month in rent. On paper, my life seems ideal. I have a good job, a nice home, and a family. Owen, my husband, and Sam, our son. To outsiders, it may appear that I have it all. I understand there are people who struggle with basic necessities, who don't have a roof over their heads, or who are elderly and live alone. In many ways, I am fortunate, and I don't take that for granted. However, my life isn't as picture-perfect as it seems. The truth is, the $4,000 rent weighs heavily on our budget. Even with my decent salary, it's a substantial financial strain. What makes it worse is Owen's refusal to contribute meaningfully. If he had a proper job, we wouldn't have to struggle like this. But Owen, at 32 years old, is still chasing a dream of becoming a musician. I once admired his ambition. He was somewhat popular in his early days, performing at various events and live houses. But let's be real, entertaining a few hundred people here, and there doesn't pay the bills. His income from part-time jobs is unstable, and his dream of making it big as a musician feels more like a fantasy now. Meanwhile, I'm left shouldering all the responsibility. Instead of working toward a stable future for our family, Owen clings to his dreams, leaving me to deal with the harsh realities of life. He dismisses my concerns as if I'm nagging. When I mention the financial burden, his response is always the same. You sound like an old woman with all your complaining. But I'm not complaining. I'm stating facts. I've been patient, supportive, and understanding, but my patience has run out. I've carried this marriage and our family on my shoulders long enough. Owen's refusal to change has forced me to make a choice. Divorce is no longer a distant thought. It's my way forward. I deserve a life where I'm not constantly worrying about rent or being belittled for speaking the truth. My son Sam and I deserve better. It's time to put my well-being first and let go of a relationship that's only holding me back. In the end, I know this decision is for the best. I'm capable of building a happy, secure life for myself and my child without Owen dragging us down. And if that means starting over, so be it. This is my chance to reclaim my independence and create a future where I feel truly fulfilled. When I was younger, I saw Owen shine as he chased his dreams. He seemed amazing, full of promise. When I got pregnant, he said, I'll work hard for our future child. I was only 20 when we got married and started a family. I thought getting married meant he would give up his music dreams and focus on building a life with us. At first, I felt bad for questioning his choice to stick with part-time jobs and his dream of music. I didn't want to make him feel like he had to give it all up for the family. But after our child was born, everything changed. Owen still kept going with his music and part-time work as if nothing had happened. I couldn't take it anymore. One day, I warned him, How long do you plan to keep working part-time jobs? You're almost 32. People your age are building careers. Owen just replied, I have my own way of living. Don't compare me to others. I couldn't believe his answer. Your words sound good, but they don't mean anything. If you want to talk about living your way, then start by helping out with the household expenses. He tried to justify himself by saying, "When I become famous, I'll make up for the money I'm not earning right now." I snapped back, "Stop dreaming and face reality." Owen had no answer to that. Eventually, he took up a part-time job, but even then it wasn't enough. Earning $2,500 or even $13,000 a month would have helped, but Owen didn't stop talking about his dreams. "You're being too noisy," he'd say. "Times have changed. There are lots of ways to succeed without signing with an agency. I'm not just dreaming anymore. It's just that my name isn't well known yet. Companies hold all the power in advertising, but I'm making progress, even if it's slow." I didn't know how to respond. It's all so confusing to me. When will he realize it's all just an illusion? Owen's band already broke up, and the other members have moved on. Some got married, and others found steady jobs. I think Owen should do the same, but he says things like, "Giving up your dreams is pathetic." I don't see it that way. I think choosing to give up your dreams for the sake of your family is a meaningful and responsible decision. Is that so wrong? When I was pregnant, Owen promised he'd work hard for our child. But now I see what he really meant. He'd keep working hard at his music career. I keep hoping that as our child grows, Owen will finally face reality. "Did you buy expensive clothes again?" I asked. "Looking good is important for my job," he replied. I couldn't believe it. He hasn't made a single dollar from music yet, and here he is talking like he's a star. It's been 11 years since our child was born, and Owen is still working part-time. Now, at almost 32, he spent years chasing his music dreams without any real success or achievements. Instead of earning money, he spends more and more on expensive clothes and music equipment. "I wish you'd spend less on those things and contribute a bit to the household," I told him. "You can't satisfy hunger with pretense," he snapped back. "These things are necessary for me." Because of his attitude, we argue a lot. We try to have these discussions when our child isn't home or move to another room, but the apartment is small, so he often overhears us if we raise our voices. That's one reason we're considering moving to a bigger place. As our son, Sam, grows, this apartment will only feel more cramped. "Hey, Sam's 11 now, and this place is getting too small. Should we move?" I asked Owen.
"Yeah," he said.
"This was your house originally anyway, right? You lived here alone before we got married. Do you have a problem with that?" I asked. "It's not a problem," he replied. "But I'd like to move to a bigger place, maybe a high-rise condo." "That would be cool. And who's going to pay for it?" "I'll help with the household expenses. You handle the rent, and I'll cover the electricity, gas, and groceries." "Please, I really want to live in a high-rise condo." With my salary, moving to a high-rise condo was possible. I was even a little encouraged that Owen offered to help, even in a small way. Maybe this could be the push he needed to understand the value of money and face reality. "Okay," I said. "I'll look for a place, but since I'm paying the rent, I get to choose where we live." "Deal?"
"Deal."
"As long as it's a high-rise condo, I'm fine with whatever you pick." I hoped this new chapter would bring some positive changes, but things didn't go as planned. A year after moving into the condo, Owen is still chasing his music dreams at 32, and he hasn't kept any of the promises he made when we moved. "Hey, the gas bill came," I reminded him. "Make sure you pay it before it's debited from my account." "I'll give it to you next time," he said casually, once again failing to take responsibility. "I don't have the money right now." "When is next time?" "You always say that, but then you never pay. You're always making excuses. Do you really think money isn't important?" "All you ever do is fuss about money," Owen replied. "All I'm asking for is the minimum amount to cover our bills. Why should I have to keep scolding you about this?" I said. He promised he would help with the bills, but it feels like those promises never meant anything. Thankfully, I set up direct payments from my own account for important expenses like electricity and gas. If I hadn't, Owen might not have paid them at all. Every now and then, though, Owen does leave some money behind. Once, I found $100 on the living room table while he wasn't home. It wasn't even close to enough, but I thought maybe he was embarrassed to give it to me directly. For a moment, I wondered if this was his way of showing he cared. Maybe he was trying to be considerate? I quickly realized I was wrong. I still hadn't received a share of the electricity bill for the month. I do pay sometimes, don't I? Owen argued. It felt like he only gave small amounts of money to make himself feel better about not contributing. And then there were the lies. One day, he said, I want to take my parents on a trip. Can you lend me some money? How much do you need? I asked. $100 should be enough, he replied. I handed it over. But deep down, I knew he wasn't taking anyone on a trip. Owen has a habit of lying when he wants pocket money. I know this, and he knows I know, but we still go through the motions. He probably uses the money to treat his friends or show off. Meanwhile, the rent for our high-rise condo is $4,000 a month. It's been this way for 5 years, and I've been struggling to cover it. I thought moving here might inspire Owen to take work more seriously, but he keeps letting me down. I can't save any money in this situation. I'd much rather use the money for something meaningful, like our child's future or retirement. I've thought about divorce before, but now I'm starting to think seriously about it. Then Owen said something that made my decision clear. Hey, we have an unused room, right? I was thinking of clearing out the unused room and making it a space for my parents. What do you think? Owen asked. A room for your parents? Are you saying they'd move in with us? Why are you suddenly bringing this up? I asked, surprised. My parents are getting older. We can't just leave them alone, Owen said, trying to sound noble.
But I know Owen.
He always talks big, but he can't follow through. Who does he think is paying the $4,000 rent for this high-rise condo? I'm also the one covering all the living expenses and our son's education. The idea of being forced to live with my in-laws on top of all this is completely unacceptable. I'm against it, I replied firmly. Don't answer so quickly. Think about it for a while, he said.
I have thought about it.
My answer is no, I said again. Why are you being so stubborn? What's wrong with taking care of your parents? Are you telling me to abandon mine? You're heartless, he snapped. To someone just listening to this conversation, I might sound selfish, but that's not true. The problem isn't his parents, it's Owen. If his parents move in, I know exactly what will happen. Owen will dump all the responsibility of taking care of them on me. I'm already doing everything for this household. I cannot, and will not take on even more. I will not live with your parents, I said firmly. Owen glared at me. I see how heartless you are.
Fine.
I'll live here with my parents, so you need to leave, he said angrily. I couldn't believe it. Ever since we got married, Owen has been completely dependent on me. And now, he's trying to kick me out of the house, even though I'm the one paying the $4,000 rent every month. His words made me realize how helpless and irresponsible he truly is. I've been considering divorce for a while, but now I'm sure. His unreasonable demands and selfishness have made my decision clear.
Fine.
I'll leave the house, I said.
Good.
Pack your things and get out quickly. I'm going out now, but I'll be back tomorrow evening. Be gone by then, he said coldly. Are you sure you don't want to check what I'm taking with me? I asked. Don't touch my equipment. Do whatever you want with the rest, he replied before leaving the house. Now that Owen was gone, I realized I was free to handle everything in the house. As I stood there thinking, my 15-year-old son, Sam, came out of his room. Mom, I'll help you pack. And I'll go with you too, he said softly, trying to comfort me. It broke my heart. Whenever Owen and I fought, Sam would quietly go to another room to avoid the tension. As a parent, it hurts me deeply that my child feels like he has to tiptoe around these situations. When Sam was younger, he loved playing with his dad and didn't understand what was really happening. But as he grew older, he began to see the truth. Now he supports me in ways no child should have to. Where should we start, Mom? Sam asked. Start with your own things, I said. I have something else to handle. I just want to give him a little shock, I thought as I grabbed my phone and made a call. Hello. I'm sorry for the last-minute request, but could you help us tomorrow? After packing up what we needed, my son and I decided to stay in a business hotel for a while with just the essentials. We would have to find a new place to live soon. That evening, knowing Owen would call, I placed my phone on the table and waited. When it rang, Sam and I looked at each other, and I picked it up. Hey. What's going on? What are you doing? Owen shouted on the other end. What do you mean? What's the problem? I asked calmly. All my clothes and equipment are here, but everything else is gone. Where are the tables? The fridge? Did you take them? No, I replied. I called a junk removal service to get rid of everything. By now, it's probably already been burned. Sam, are you there too? Owen asked, sounding even more panicked. When Sam spoke up, Owen seemed completely caught off guard. He probably didn't expect Sam to still be around and was shocked to find the house nearly empty. What do you mean everything's gone? The furniture and appliances, those are marital property, he said angrily. You told me I could do whatever I wanted with everything except your equipment, I reminded him. So I did just that. How am I supposed to live now? Owen asked, his voice full of frustration. If you need furniture, you can buy new ones. For now, maybe use your amp as a chair or wrap your guitar in a towel for a pillow, I replied with a hint of sarcasm. That's not funny.
How could you do something so nasty? He snapped.
We're getting a divorce, I said firmly. Yes, I understand, Owen replied. He sounded like he expected me to be shaken by the mention of divorce. Maybe he thought this was just another argument that would eventually blow over. But I had already made up my mind. His words didn't scare me. They only made me feel more certain about my decision. In fact, I was almost relieved that he brought it up. Really? You understand? We're getting a divorce, I repeated, making sure he knew I was serious. You don't have to say it so many times. I understand, I said coldly and calmly, making it clear that this was final. Owen must have realized that the divorce would hurt him more than it would hurt me. He seemed flustered, unsure of what to say next. Normally, he'd apologize and back down, but this time, he couldn't. Maybe it's his stubborn pride as a musician. He can't admit defeat. But I know Owen too well. Once he says something, he doesn't take it back, even if he regrets it. At first, Owen acted like he had everything under control, but now it all seems ridiculous. We'll talk about the details of the divorce later, I said. You're planning to live in this house with your parents, right? Should I go to the real estate agent first to update the contract? Owen hesitated. Yeah, but if the contract is changed to my name, the divorce can't be undone. This is your chance to apologize, he said, his voice shaky. It felt like a weak, last-ditch attempt to stop what was happening. Maybe he thought my decision to get rid of the furniture and appliances was part of some master plan to force a divorce. But after 15 years of frustration, my feelings weren't going to change so easily. Deep down, I wished he would face the consequences a bit more. A few days later, Owen and I went to the real estate office to review the condo contract. I smoothly ended my part of the agreement. The process was quick and simple. But when Owen tried to sign a new contract, there was a big problem. What? The rent is $4,500. Owen's face turned pale. When I first signed the contract for the high-rise condo, Owen left everything to me, choosing the property, negotiating, and signing the paperwork. He never even asked about the details, so he had no idea how expensive it was. There's no way I can pay that rent, even if my parents help, Owen said in shock. Apparently, after I left, Owen planned to rely on his parents to share the cost of the rent. He assumed that between the three of them, they could manage it. But the actual rent was way more than he expected. Since his parents are retired and only have their pensions, and Owen is a part-time worker with an unstable income, it was clear they couldn't afford it. I had already seen this coming. You've been paying this much every month? Owen asked, stunned. Yes, I replied. I've been paying it the whole time. Because you don't work, we haven't been able to save anything. I can't handle a contract like this, Owen admitted. Don't worry, I said calmly. I don't think you can handle it either. What do you mean? Owen asked, looking confused. He seemed so overwhelmed that he didn't even understand the basic requirements for renting a property. I turned to the real estate agent. Excuse me, is it possible for someone with an irregular income of $2,500 per month to qualify for this contract if their parents cover the difference? The agent shook their head. No, that would be very difficult. The applicant needs to have a stable income to qualify. I looked at Owen.
See?
I told you it wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to pass the screening. Owen sat there in silence, realizing for the first time just how far out of his depth he was. The real estate agent, hearing our conversation, probably realized we were about to separate. He gave a small, uneasy smile, but didn't say much. "So, what do I do now?" Owen asked. "If you can't sign the contract, you have no choice but to leave," I said. "There's no other option since I've already canceled my part of the contract." Owen looked shocked. "Wow, you've done something ridiculous again." Owen, who likes to call himself an artist, doesn't have much self-esteem, but he loves to show off. This situation must have been a huge embarrassment for him. With his low income, our pending divorce, and now being outsmarted by me in front of the agent, his face turned red and sweaty like he had just run a marathon in the middle of summer. Ignoring Owen, I continued speaking to the agent. "Since the contract can't go through, we'll need to move out right away, correct? I'm sorry for the trouble, but we don't have much left in the house. It's mostly just clothes and music equipment. It shouldn't take long to clean up. Can you guide me on the procedures for moving out?" Owen interrupted. "You knew I didn't understand the rent or the conditions of the house, and you still went ahead with all of this. What do you mean?" "I asked if you wanted to review the contract, and you said you'd handle it yourself," I replied. "Whether you knew about my income or not, I thought there might still be a way to make it work." Owen said, clearly frustrated. "Don't be ridiculous," I said calmly. "I'm not leaving," Owen insisted. "If you don't leave, I'll have to call the police," I replied. "I don't know all the legal details, but you could be sued for trespassing or refusing to vacate. And since this isn't my property anymore, the real estate agency or the owner might get involved. It could get messy if a company reports it." The agent looked increasingly uncomfortable as Owen stood there in silence. "You don't want to embarrass yourself any further, do you? Go home and pack your things," I told Owen. Without another word, Owen left the real estate office. I turned to the agent. "I'm sorry for all the trouble. The house will be empty soon. If anything is left behind, I'll take care of disposing of it." Later, when the agent and I went to the condo, it was already empty. To apologize for the awkward situation and any inconvenience caused, I brought some sweets to the real estate office. The process itself went smoothly, but I could tell the agent was still a bit confused by everything that had happened. "I'm truly sorry about how things turned out, but this situation brought the dreamy musician back to reality. Now, he has no choice but to face the real world." After he left the house, our divorce was officially finalized. Since neither of us had much money, me spending most of mine on rent, and him barely earning anything, there was no argument over dividing assets. My son decided to stay with me. As for my ex-husband, he probably thought he could rely on his parents for support, but I had already closed that door. After being married for about 11 years, I reached out to my in-laws to inform them about the divorce and to say my goodbyes. I felt it was only right to keep them informed about the process. When my in-laws learned about all the things my ex-husband had done, they chose to step back and stop supporting him. They told him they wouldn't help him anymore until he found a stable job and became independent. Because of this, his plan to move in with his parents fell apart. Now over 32 years old, my ex-husband is finding it difficult to get a regular job after living so long as a freelancer. He continues to work freelance, but his income is still very low. He struggles to even pay rent for a small, cheap apartment. In this situation, continuing his music career is nearly impossible. This is the reality for my ex-husband, a man who achieved nothing. As for me, I've rented a new apartment where I now live with my son. Without my ex-husband, the rent is much lower, and I can use my money for more meaningful things. While I don't criticize people for chasing their dreams, I've found happiness in creating a comfortable and stable life for my son and me. This is what truly matters to me now.